Hello again. You're watching The Breakdown, the NHL trade deadline edition. And when I say dead, I'm trying to emphasize the word. Brent Lail along with Merrick Sutherland. So the deadline edition of the program, we start off with what, close to 20 deals today, but nothing of major significance. Kevin Montgomery, ex-Knight on the move, as well as Dennis Wideman and Robbie Schrempp picked up on waivers. Guys, are you enthralled by this? Are you going to have trouble sleeping tonight?
I think that was about the extent of it. Did you just not sum up the entire thing right there? It was, there was nothing happening really. They've hyped this up so big and so huge over the past couple of years. It's just been a letdown year after year now when nothing really happens.
We blame the Maple Leafs all the time for everything and anything, and maybe we can blame the Maple Leafs for such a snooze fest on deadline day because they made all the big deals 2 weeks in advance, Merrick.
Yeah, and I think a lot of GMs are buying into that same belief, the Burke belief, if you will, is like get your substantial deals done ahead of time so that there's no hiccups, nothing getting in the way at last minute.
This is what I hate about the salary cap. You have players signing 15-year deals or staying in small markets and not necessarily exploring the open market and potentially coming back to where hockey really matters. And then you also have the implications salary-wise when it comes to the deadline day. It's not like you can pull in a $7 million guy and say it's no big deal and then hang on to his money going forward. You've got to think of how it's all going to fit into these parameters. So, a lack of action on deadline day is another byproduct of the salary cap, and I wish it would go away. Honestly, that's my opinion.
Yeah, and I mean, you're going to see a lot of people, but you have to see the good it's done too. I mean, some of these teams that are, making a run for it never would have made a run for it. I mean, when's the last time Calgary, Edmonton, these are teams making money now, and they didn't before.
Even the Canadian teams too, and that's a good thing, right, Brent?
Yeah, for sure. And the salary cap has its pros and its cons, and I think the deadline day rolls around, and there are problems when it comes to acquiring players, and a lot of it has to do with guys signing long-term deals, like you said, or short-term deals where you just can't acquire that guy, or there's so few guys who are available that when the guy does become available, the asking price is too high, so a deal doesn't get done, and it all leads back to
Brent loves hockey. I mean, you read some of his tweets. He's just loving hockey.
I just think the game right now is mediocre.
You don't want to watch another Senators Leafs?
I could pass on that.
Saturday night, hockey night in Canada, going to a shootout. One puck gets by a goaltender. Dennis Wideman on his way to the Capitals. Jason Arnott, how many times has he been traded? He's on his way to the Capitals. Dennis Wideman, though, he's the player I think deserves an honorary Memorial Cup ring. He wasn't a part of the 2005 team, but he was there leading it into the Western Conference Final in 2004. If you ask Jim McKellar and those guys, he was integral in helping the young cats learn how to win so that they could go on and do their thing in 2005. Moves around to his third team now, leaving Florida, comes from Boston. Do you think he's just sort of going to be a journeyman defenseman? Do you think he sticks around in Washington for a while, or how are we going to look back on Dennis Wideman's career?
I think he's a power play specialist, similar to what Rob Schrempp is a little bit, but obviously Wideman has had a lot more longevity in his career, a lot better career than Rob Schrempp at this point. But I mean, he's an offensive player, and his defensive zone has a little bit to be desired. But I mean, he is what he is, and he's going to bring that. He'll be known as a guy who was able to put up points, but never really do anything substantial.
He didn't come cheap. I mean, they have to take on his $3.9 million contract. They gave up a third rounder and a player for him, and I think that's a lot more than you would have expected. I can't remember what Boston gave up for him, but it wasn't that much.
A couple of national team guys in Sean Bell from Canada leaving one situation, and Kevin Montgomery, a part of the U.S. national team, going to Edmonton, and again, that rebuild continues on. You mentioned Rob Schrempp. Kind of a misfit at the OHL level, but with all-world talent, just absolutely lit it up. Almost 200 goals or something crazy like that. At the NHL level, still a misfit, meaning he just can't fit into any situation. I don't know how this ends for Rob Schrempp, and it's too bad. He's a great guy, but I just don't see him fitting in anywhere at any time.
Yeah, Scott Gordon finally gave him that chance in New York, and at least he's in the NHL now after toiling in the American League for so long. I don't know whether it'll be a better fit where he is now, or at least in New York he was getting to play. We'll see what they have in store for him.
And he was playing quite well before he got injured earlier in the season, and then ever since he's been back, that's been touch and go. But he might get that chance. Atlanta, they're in the playoff hunt. They could be there. So who knows?
Thanks to that big win over the Maple Leafs, Atlanta beats the Leafs 24 hours before they send half of their guys off to other locations. You guys are working on a couple of stories that are interesting. Beal hosting OFSA. It's been 5 years in a row they have not been beaten on London turf, winning city title after city title. Hey, great stuff. Tony Marcatulio's done a fantastic job. They should write books about him. But from this guy's perspective, you got to pull off an OFSA along the way. You can't be the Atlanta Braves and look back and say, we won all these division titles and we were always there in the promised land but never pulled it off. At some point, you got to win one. And I'm wondering, do the people at Beal feel that pressure to win on their home turf?
Oh, of course they do. Now, they recognize that there are about 1 to 2 elite teams that will be coming next week, but they feel that they can hang with them. And then depending on what game plan plays out, they got a shot. They believe that they have a shot to take it.
We're doing stories about Malcolm Brown. We're doing stories about Trey Langford. And then the Siobhan Bennett Miller comes into the picture and in the biggest games of the season absolutely terrorizes the opposition. Brent, did this kid just come out of nowhere, or was he kind of lying in the weeds?
He's kind of been lying in the weeds. He's been on the map of college coaches and stuff, but he was only in grade 11 last year when they kind of stepped on the scene. This year he's in grade 12. He's just progressing a little bit. He's playing the point guard, and he's so quick. And in their pressure defense, he creates a lot of turnovers. He knocked down some huge three-pointers in their game against STA. And he's got another year. He's coming back again next season for Beal. So by the time he gets to be after next season, he'll be ready to step into a university or college program, no problem.
Malcolm Brown coming back?
Yes, he is. I think he's coming back too. And they have another young kid who's in grade 9 right now running the point. That this team is building towards. They're going to be good for a long time.
Here's the situation, though. Beal could win next year, win the year after that, but if they don't win OFSA, I'm not saying it's a tainted record, but you got to win the big one at some point, and there's no better time to do it than now. Real quick before we go, guys, Jake Worrad, one of my favorite junior hockey players, a couple years on now with OHL eligibility, really hasn't been able to do anything because he's been injured, coming back from another injury yet again. Do you look at this just from the player's psyche? If this is it for him, I mean, if he's injured again, he might just walk away.
No, that would definitely be bad because, like I said, we do love the kid. He's a great kid. He's back in September 10th is when he got hurt in the preseason. So he's been rehabbing for 6 months. Finally steps onto the ice in a Junior B game on Sunday night, and the Stars win the first game. And it's his road back to recovery. I only pray for him that something doesn't bad happen again. But his ACL seems to be recovered. He says he's 100%. So all the best to him.
We're getting old, guys, because we're talking about London Knights alum who played the blue line for the biggest junior hockey franchise in Canada when we were here, and now they're NHL veterans, and now we're also referring to soon-to-be London Knight blue liners. Last word goes to you, Jake Worrad, great guy, young guy. You got to keep your fingers crossed for him because we hate to see this guy's story end with I quit because I can't stay healthy.
Yeah, every time I've talked to him, he's always had a really good personality, really upbeat, and really hopeful that he can get back and dedicated to the process. You really hope he doesn't go the way of a Frank Redeker and cannot. It's injury after injury after injury. You really hope that he can stay on the ice.
He has the wherewithal, so let's hope he can pull that off. NHL trade deadline day was an absolute snooze fest, but things will pick up because the Brier is coming to town less than a week away, and OFSA Quad A boys basketball starts on Monday, March the 7th, 8th, and 9th, and who knows, maybe Beal hoists that title when all is said and done. For Brent, from Eric, I'm Norm. We'll talk to you next time on The Breakdown.